Hey everybody, my name is Andrew Burkum, and I'm so glad to have you here with me today. We are going to be working together for the next few weeks, and what we're here to work together on is performing arts. And just like it sounds, performing arts is exciting because with a lot of arts, the visual arts and some of the other things that we sometimes do in this program, you might need a lot of different materials. You might need paper or paints or crayons or things like that. But with the performing arts, the main thing that you need, you've already got. It's your body. Well, your body, your voice, your face, and your brain. But we'll get to all of that a little bit later. The first thing we're going to talk about is, what exactly are we going to do in these next classes? Because my idea is, we're going to break this down into a lot of little chunks, and we'll do just a little tiny piece every week. And then we'll put all of those things together into something that you should be able to make right there from home, the same way that I'm making it here from my home. And we'll be able to put a great performance together as one group. So that should be a lot of fun. A little bit of information about myself. I've been doing this for a long time. I've been acting and directing and writing and doing all of those things for almost 25 years at this point. And I've worked in movies, I've worked in television, I've done a lot of work on stage, I've written a whole web series along with my partners, and I'm a part of the Phoenix Creative Collective, as well as working here with ARTREE at the MAC. So I love the performing arts. There's nothing more that I love than getting up on stage and being able to perform in front of people. Have you ever had the opportunity to perform in front of people? What kinds of things have you done? Have you been in maybe a play? Maybe with a community theater group like Playhouse Merced or Merced Shakespeare Fest or even the Phoenix Creative Collective? Have you been in a play at your school or maybe at your church? Those are some of the places where I got my start and found out that I loved acting. No matter what you've done, and even if you haven't done anything else, you can start today and you can become a great actor just through practice, like anything else. And so that's what we're going to do. We're going to practice. Now, the first thing that we need to do before we get involved in any of the activities that we're going to do, and I'm going to get to what our end goal is in just a second here, but the first thing that we need to do is, just like anything else, have you ever played any sports at all? You play football or soccer or softball or baseball, any of those things? Before you play any of those sports, what's the first thing that you have to do? Can you think about that? If you said warm up or stretch, then you're exactly right. Now, why do you think you have to do that, warm up or stretch? I'll tell you. The reason that you need to do it before you exercise is because when you're exercising the muscles and the fibers and the things in your body, you need to make sure that those fibers and muscles and tendons and all the good body stuff is prepared to move in the range of motion and in the way that you need to be able to move them. Now, acting is no different at all. In order to act, I mentioned before, we need to use our body, but we also need to use our voice, our face, and our mind. And so we need to be prepared to act. So on today's session, I'm going to focus specifically on a few exercises that are going to help warm us up and put us in a creative state of mind so that we're prepared to do our work in the performing arts. So we're going to start with the body. The body is an important tool. Just like in sports, when you're doing acting, you got to get that body warmed up. You've got to be prepared to go. You've got to be relaxed. Have you ever been on stage before, if you've been in a play, and had what they call stage fright? I have. It's that moment where you get up there and all of a sudden everything seems kind of scary and everybody's looking at you and you don't know what to do next. And a lot of time you forget your lines when you're doing that. The lines are the words that we say if you haven't been in a play. Do you know why that happens? I'll tell you one reason that it happens. One reason that it happens is because when we get up in a situation where we're not as comfortable as normal, we start to get tense and we get nervous. And our bodies start to contract in on themselves. And if you can think about it just now, you can feel your whole body squeezing in tightly, like it sometimes does when we're in front of people. And you know what else happens when we do that? We stop breathing. Or at least we stop breathing as deeply as we normally would. Now, remember, I said the brain is an important tool for an actor and for a performing artist. And one thing that the brain loves is oxygen. In fact, when the brain doesn't get enough oxygen, it starts to go into what we call a fight or flight mode. It starts to actually shut things down. So parts of it that it thinks aren't necessary, it'll start to shut those down so that it can run away from that bear that it thinks is chasing you, or fight that bad guy that it thinks is trying to break in and steal your stuff. In that fight or flight mode, your brain thinks that things like remembering lines isn't important, or being creative in certain capacities isn't important. And so, because of that, one of the first things that we have to do is we have to learn to, I know, this is probably something that you've never done before. It's probably something you've never even heard before. We have to learn to breathe. Oh, you're telling me that you already know how to breathe? You've been doing it your whole life? Well, that's ridiculous. No, of course, we all know how to breathe. But it's important to be able to breathe the right way and to breathe deeply and to breathe relaxation into our bodies. Now, right where you are right now, the first thing I want you to do is, I want you to stand just like I'm standing. And I want you to take a breath. Take a big, deep breath with me. Okay, ready? Here we go. 1, 2, 3. Breathe in. Oh, now when you breathed in, were you like me? Where did you feel that breath? Did you feel it in your lungs, up here where in your ribcage where you think your lungs are? And did you do what I did? Did your shoulders go up when you breathe, just like me? Let's try it again. Take that big, deep breath in 3. 1, 2, 3. Oh, look, my shoulders went up just like that, and I got all of my breath here right in my chest. But that's not the way we want to breathe when we breathe deeply. We have this really neat thing that's right in the center of our bodies that's called the diaphragm. It's just a little bit beneath where your rib cage kind of meets right there. And that diaphragm is this awesome kind of muscly thing. And what it does is it's responsible for expanding out and pulling air down into your lungs. You never knew you were going to get so much science in an acting class, did you? But it's true. You've got to use that diaphragm to pull that air down into your lungs. So what happens is, as it stretches out, it's just like a balloon, like inflating a balloon inside your chest. And so all of that air comes into your chest. And so now, I want you to take that same deep breath, but I want you to put your hand right here, right underneath where your ribcage meets. And this time, when you take that deep breath, I want you to focus on keeping your shoulders down, okay? Don't make sure your shoulders aren't raising up. Keep them down, okay? So, on 3, we're going to take that deep breath together. Ready? Here we go. 1, 2, 3. And let it out. Now, did you feel something different? Did you feel that move out? Isn't it funny how when we breathe, we think of breathing in and breathing out. And sometimes we think about that as breathing in goes up and breathing out goes down. But really what's happening is that diaphragm is going out when we breathe in, and then it's pushing that breath out when we breathe out again. We'll get back to that when we talk about what we call projection on stage. And that's how actors are able to talk loudly enough for an audience to hear them without shouting and hurting their voice. But that's for a different lesson. Right now, we're just practicing our breathing because the first step of preparing ourselves to act is always relaxation. So let's prepare that again. Let's do a nice deep breath. You can put your hands back here so that you can feel that. Relaxed shoulders, keeping them down, and just breathing out and breathing in. I said that backwards. It's breathing in first. But your diaphragm goes out, so it seems kind of backwards, doesn't it? So breathing in, here we go. And breathing out. Good. Now that we're breathing deeply and we've got lots of oxygen going to our brain feels free to be a little bit more creative. Let's work on relaxing the rest of our bodies. One of the things that I like to do to relax my body is just to kind of stretch and yawn. And that seems strange. Stretch and yawn. And a lot of times when we think about yawning, we think about being tired. But the fact is that yawning is a part of the process that helps our bodies relax. And when our bodies are relaxed, they can be more energized than they are even when we're wide awake, not yawning at all. So I want you to just stretch and yawn with me. Just stretch up as high as you can. And just yawn. Oh, good. And reach up high. And then reach down low. I'm not going to touch my toes here, but reach down to the ground. Touch your toes if you can. And then kind of hang there, right here in the middle. And what I'll do is we're gonna walk it up here from the ground. So I'm gonna count to 10. As I count to 10, we're gonna slowly raise ourselves up from this head down position. And then the last thing to come up will be our head. So from 10, here we go. It's a relaxation. So 10, 9, 8, slowly now, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, and 1. Your head should come up. How do you feel? Do you feel nice and relaxed? Does all of that feel kind of loose and ready to go? You can even shake it out a little bit. I like to do that. Just kind of shake my hands, shake my arms. That way I feel loose and limber and ready to go. So now that we're relaxed, the next thing we have to do is, we've kind of dealt with our body tool a little bit. But the next thing we need to do is we need to deal with our voice tool. And our voice is very important as we go on stage especially, and as we do the activity that we're going to do in this class, which I will still get to in just a little bit. But what we need to do is we need to warm up those muscles in our voice, again, that will allow us to speak loudly and clearly so that our audience can understand us. But in addition to that, we have to warm up these muscles in our face. You know, these face muscles that we have, and this tongue muscle that we have, all of that is a huge part of speech, and sometimes we don't think about it. And believe it or not, you can actually, remember how I talked about in sports, we want to warm up, we want to stretch, and part of it is because we don't want to get a cramp. Well, did you know you can actually get cramps in your facial muscles? Have you ever had to smile too long for a picture? Sometimes when you do that, it starts to hurt in your cheeks. That's a cramp in your facial muscles. We don't want that. We especially don't want it while we're on stage. And so we're going to do some warm-ups. We'll do some verbal warm-ups that are going to allow us to warm up those facial muscles and those voice muscles. Now, as we say these aloud together, I want you to focus on speaking nice and loudly and clearly. More important that it's clearly. So I want you to over-exaggerate everything that you say. And because we're working on our face muscles, I want you to make sure that you are opening your mouth nice and wide and that you're looking as silly as you possibly can while we say all these things. No one else is watching you right now. That's what warm-ups are for. It's a safe space for us to do all kinds of crazy and silly things that we would never do in front of other people. And so this is the time. I'm not even watching you right now. I'm on the other side of a camera, but you're watching me. So let's do it together, okay? So what we're going to do is I'm going to say some phrases. And these phrases are designed, they're not tongue twisters, but they're designed to really open up our mouths and make us use those muscles, right, in our faces. And so what will happen is I will say the phrase forward, and then we will say it together. I'll say it a second time and you say it with me, okay? So here's the first one. The first one's really easy. It's just the vowels. It's A, E, I, O, U. Now, when I do that, do you notice how my face muscles move, how my face looks kind of ridiculous and contorted? I want you to focus on that too. Ready? So again, it's A, E, I, O, U. Now, you say it with me. Ready? Here we go. A, E, I, O, U. Good, good. Let's do them backwards. Do you know the vowels backwards? Let's do them. It's U, O, I, E, A. I'll do it one more time for you. U, O, I, E, A. Great. Now let's do it together. Ready? U, O, I, E, A. Good. Are you getting some stretch in those muscles yet? Good. Keep it up. Make sure that mouth is open nice and wide. That's how that voice comes out so we can hear it. Now, the next one is kind of seasonally appropriate. And it goes like this. The answer is as easy as eggs at Easter. Now, that's appropriate, right? Easter's right around the corner. Listen to it again. The answer is as easy as eggs at Easter. Now, you say it with me, nice and wide. The answer is as easy as eggs at Easter. Good, good. Let's try another one. He usually urges an umbrella upon us. Okay, let's listen again. He usually urges an umbrella upon us. Are you ready to try it? All together now. He usually urges an umbrella upon us. Good, good. Let's do one more, I think, before we move on to the next thing. This one is kind of advanced level, and it requires you to kind of roll your R's. So, if you can make that sound, that's part of how we're going to get that tongue all warmed up and ready to go too. And so this one goes, round and round the rugged rocks, the ragged rascals ran. These are good old classic theater warm-ups, right? They used to go back to time before time before time. Listen to it again. Round and round the rugged rocks, the ragged rascals ran. Now, if you can't make your tongue do that, you can just say your regular R's. Round and round the rugged rocks, the ragged rascals ran. You can do that for me, okay? But let's say it all together. Ready? Round and round the rugged rocks, the ragged rascals ran. Good. Now you're on your way to a Scottish accent, too. So we've killed two birds with one stone. Excellent work. Good, good stuff. So now we've got that body tool warmed up. We did some exercise, some relaxation. We did some deep breathing to get that oxygen into our lungs and, more importantly, into our brains. We got that voice tool warmed up, making sure the muscles in our face are prepared to go, and making sure that we're ready to open our mouth wide and let everything come out. Now, we've got to engage the most important acting tool of all. And that is, have you guessed it yet? That's right. It's your brain. Your brain is what helps you more than anything else when you're acting. And with the brain, your brain's a tricky thing when it comes to acting. Because think about when you go to school all day long and you have to sit down and you do math and you do science and all those great things that we do at school, right? But a lot of those things use a very different part of your brain than the creative part that we're focusing on using. Now, both of those parts are important, and in fact, we find that people who exercise both parts of their brain are better at both of those things. They become more creative and more able to deal in what we call abstract thought. Now, that abstract thought is an important thing because, well, think about it this way. Here's how I like to think about it. Have you ever drawn a person? If you were going to draw a person right now, how would you draw that person? Me, if you were to ask me to draw a person, I'd probably draw, a circle for the head and a stick for the body, and you've seen this before, right? It's what we call a stick figure. But if you think about that stick figure, does it really look like a person? Well, kind of. But, my head's kind of round because there's not much on top. But most people's heads aren't perfectly round. And most people don't have a perfectly stick-shaped body and perfectly triangular legs. That stick figure is not so much a drawing of a person as it is a symbol for a person. Have you ever seen a very young child draw a person? Somebody who's maybe even younger than kindergarten. My daughter, Serenity, when she draws people, she doesn't draw stick figures. And many very young children don't. They don't draw stick figures. Instead, they'll draw figures that are kind of made up of shapes. You might get a circle for a head, but the body is more of a rounded shape, and the arms and legs are more of rounded shapes. Do you know why that is? It's because those very young children haven't been taught yet that the symbol for a person is that stick figure that we draw. So they haven't learned to substitute the symbol for what their observations are telling them. Now, this is very important, because the most important thing that we can do to engage our brain on stage is to involve our senses. Can you name the senses right now? What senses do you have? There's 5 of them, right? You have one of them that's feeling, one of them that's hearing, that's 2, one that is seeing, that's 3, one that is smelling, that's 4, and one that is tasting, that's 5. Now, in acting, we at some point engage all 5 of our senses. A little bit less tasting. It's very strange when we go around licking things on stage. People don't like that. It's dirty. It's how you get sick in the first place. Don't do it. But we do engage all of our senses at some point, even taste, which I'll get to in just a moment for you. But the reason that it's so important that we engage those senses is that those senses help us move out of that abstract portion of our mind, that portion of our mind that wants to deal with symbols, and into the portion of our mind that's involved with observing the world around us and making connections between things around us. That sounds interesting, doesn't it? We have to actually trick our brains. In fact, we have to actually, this is a secret, we have to actually make our brains bored in order to properly access our sense of creativity. Isn't that strange? Because what happens is when we bore our brains enough, those things kick in and we begin to access that part of our mind that's more creative. So let's work on those senses for just a second. In fact, this is going to be, we're going to have this and then one more exercise today, and then we're going to get down to what our assignments are going to be. So this sensory exercise, what I want you to do is, I want you to use your senses and your imagination. Imagination, very important. It's what acting is really all about, right? It's using our imagination to put ourselves in places and in characters that we don't naturally inhabit. I want you to use your imagination, and along with me, you're going to create for yourself an imaginary object, utilizing the memory that you have in your senses. Now, the way we're going to do this is I want you to put out your hand. Just put your hand out, just like this. Good. Now, in your hands, what I want you to do is I want you to think about, you ever go to one of those gumball machines, right? Those things that you see in the store, and you get one of those kind of super bouncy balls out of them, the little rubber balls, and they're brightly colored. They're all kinds of different colors, and they bounce really high when you bounce them. Have you ever gotten one of those? Well, that's what I want you to create in your hand right now. And you say, well, there's nothing in my hand. Well, there's nothing in your hand. You're going to use your imagination, and you're going to use the memory of your senses. So right now, I want you to focus on that hand. Focus on that space that's in that hand. And I want you to remember what it was like that super bouncy rubber ball felt like, and what it looked like, and specifically what it felt like in your hand. Remembering that all objects have 3 specific things that we think about when we think about creating imaginary objects. They have a size, a certain size. They have a certain shape, and they have a certain weight. So what size is that bouncy ball? What size do you think your bouncy ball is? Just think about that. And what shape is it? It's not a circle, right? It's a sphere. So it has 3 dimensions. The way a sphere feels in your hand is different than a way just a flat circle object feels. And it has weight. What's the weight of that bouncy ball? So what we're going to do is, I want you to take just a minute with me. And this is going to get a little strange because we're going to be just in silence together for a moment. But remember, we have to do that because our brains have to get a little bit bored as we focus on those senses. So really focus in, along with me, and focus on creating that bouncy ball for yourself in your hand. Okay? And I'm going to be quiet while we do that. So just focus there in your hand. Is it starting to show up for you yet? If it's not, what I want you to do is I want you to pause the video. And I want you to spend as much time, sometimes it can take 2, 5, or even 10 minutes for you to put that together. But I want you to work to really create that ball in your hands. If you've been successful, or if you're coming back from pausing the video, what color is your ball? Do you see it? Is it real enough that you see what color it is? Mine's a very dark blue. And I can see that kind of seam that ball has in the two halves of the way the rubber is formed. And I can kind of feel that with my fingers. Can you pick it up with your other hand? And just hold that ball in your hand? And then, if you still have that ball, if you have on a surface where you can do this, can you bounce it? And catch it? That's pretty neat, isn't it? And if it stays the same size when you bounce it and catch it, then that object for you is real. Just like this pretend bouncy ball for me is a real thing. And so let's take that, and now we're just going to make it vanish, make it disappear back into the ether. Pretty cool, isn't it? You can fool your senses into believing that things are there just by using the memory that's in those senses. If you don't believe me, now we're going to engage a different sense. Once again, I want you to take your fingers just like this, just like you're holding something in your hand. And in between your fingers, I want you to imagine that you're holding a wedge of a lemon or a lime, a citrus fruit, okay? Can you think about what that looks like? Just take a look at it. What does it look like? How does the peel look? How does the inside of the fruit look? Has kind of a shiny sheen, or how does it look to you? How would you describe it? Don't try to use words, because when we use words we get into symbols, but just think about, how does that look to me? What does it look like? Does it look very juicy? Does it look very kind of a little bit wet? Now, once you've got that in your hand, and you're convinced that it's there, you can really see it, I want you to take that, and I just want you to take a bite right out of it. Did your mouth start to water? We'll make the lime go away, or the lemon go away. It's an amazing trick that you can play on your senses to use that memory of what that citrus fruit tastes like in order to create the experience for you. And acting is all about recreating experiences using memories and experiences that we've had to imagine experiences that we're not really having. So that is engaging our brain tool. Now, one last activity we're going to do today before we get to assignments. And that last activity is, we've used our brain from a sensory input standpoint. We've tried to bore the part of our brain that wants to deal with symbols, and we've tried to get into the creative part of our brain that deals with sensory input. But now we also have to focus. When you hear the word focus, what do you think about? Do you think about, like I do you think about a camera? Or maybe a telescope or a microphone? Not a microphone, but a microscope. When a camera or a telescope or a microscope focuses on something, what's it doing? Well, it's narrowing down, right? It's narrowing down so that all it can see, so that everything about the optics of that camera or that lens or that telescope or microscope is looking at just one specific thing. When we talk about focus in the acting world or in the performing world, we're talking about taking all of our faculties, our body tool, our voice tool, our brain tool, and focusing all those things in on one thing. So focus is the discipline that helps us bring all of our tools together in order to put together a performance. Interesting, isn't it? We're going to play a little focus game right now. You may have played this one before. This game is called the mirror game. Now, in the mirror game, you're going to be a mirror for me. I can't see you, so I can't be a mirror for you. But you can see me. And so what you're going to do is, you're going to attempt to mirror all of the actions that I perform with my body. Now don't worry, I will go nice and slow so you can follow along with me. I'm not going to try and trick you, but I want you to focus on performing all of the actions just like I do. So the first thing that I want you to do is just stand like I'm standing. Just straight, arms at your sides, shoulders nice and relaxed. Don't lock up your knees. That's how we pass out. Nobody wants that. And then just watch my body and see if you can move in time with me. Ready? Here we go. Oh, you see my hands start to move? Nice and slow. Don't try and guess. Don't try and beat me there. Just stay right with me. Now, is your hand mirroring my hand? Is your hand over here on this side? This is my right hand. But if you're mirroring me, your left hand is up right now. That's how mirrors work. And that's a part of how we process this focus discipline in our brain. So keep an eye on that. Switch hands if you need to. And now let's just very slowly make the reverse of that motion. Keeping in time with me. Control is an important part of acting as well, and of using your body. Are you ready? Let's try it. Let's try another one. It's very simple, right? We're just going over to the other side now. Nice and slow. Nice and easy. And there we go. And we'll do the reverse there. Good. Good. Now what if we were to, are you watching? Are you focusing? Oh. Both hands. Good. Are you still with me? Keep an eye on my body and continue to follow my motions. Just at the same speed and the same pace as I do. Are you doing a great job? Good work. Good. That's a very simple focus exercise. Now, if you've got somebody else there with you at your house, maybe your mom or dad, brother, sister, whoever it is, you can do that activity along with them so that they can actually be your mirror partner. And that's a lot of fun to do. And you can get it, and you can make it a little bit of a game. You can try and trick each other. I don't want to do that to you today. You can make it a little bit of a game to see if the other person is really using their focus and really focusing all of their mental energy on you. It's a lot of fun. So, today, just to wrap up some things that we've talked about, we talked about the 3 tools that every actor has. Do you remember what those 3 tools are? That's right. Your body, your voice, and your mind. Very good. And do you remember the stages of warm-up that we went through? That's very good. We went through relaxation, and then we did vocal warm-ups to warm up the voice tool. We did sensory preparation to get our brains in a creative space, and then we worked on focus to bring all of the tools together. Excellent job. Good work. I'm so glad that you're here doing this with me today. I'm excited. Now, things are going to change a little bit in the following weeks. This was an introductory session because I want you to learn all of these warm-ups. We won't go through every one of these on every single session because now that you know them, I'll expect you to get yourself prepared before. Now, we may go through 1 or 2 activities to prepare ourselves, but we won't go through all of them every week. But every week, I would love for you to just spend 5 minutes before the class preparing yourself in this way, just like we've done today. And maybe I'll even introduce a few new exercises so you can replace things out. It doesn't always have to be exactly the same. Now, it's time for our assignment. And at the end of every single class, I'm going to give you an assignment. Now, don't worry, there's no grades. Nobody's going to be watching you. You don't even have to perform in front of an audience if you don't want to. Now's the time, though, when I'll tell you what this class is going to be all about. You might have read it in the title. This class is going to be a class that focuses on acting and performance, but specifically on something that we call audio drama. Do you know what an audio drama is? Have you ever heard maybe an old radio broadcast where people were doing a comedy on the radio, or maybe something very serious, like we just did a production of The War of the Worlds with people just using audio. No pictures, just people using their voices to act, and us as an audience using our ears to listen. And it's really interesting the kinds of pictures that happen in your mind when you do that. But it's different from watching a movie. Think about your favorite movie right now. What is it? You think about it? Now think about if you were going to watch that movie, but not watch the pictures, only listen to the sound. Do you think you would still get as much entertainment out of that movie? Would it still be as much fun to watch? Not watch, I guess listen to. Would you still know if you were listening for the first time what that movie was even about? It might be hard because movies and television shows, they're built for our eyes. They're built for us to see. But audio drama is specifically built around us being able to hear. And so what we're going to explore together is how we create different characters, different emotions, and different situations using just our voice tool. And as we go along, I'm even going to teach you some things about recording yourself, and maybe even about how you can put some of those things on the internet, just like I put some of those things on the internet. So, your assignment for this week. Next week, we're going to start to talk about story, and we're going to start to talk about characterization. Now, when I say characterization, that means figuring out all of the different things that go into making a character. And characters are what we do as actors. We create those characters for our audience. So, what I want you to do this week is, I want you to make a list of 5 interesting characters that you can think of. Now, it might be somebody from a movie or a TV show that you've seen. It might just be somebody that sounds interesting, like maybe a very old man, or maybe a very young girl. So I'll leave that up to you. I just want you to come up with 5 characters that you think are interesting, because next week we'll work on how to characterize those characters using, well, all of our tools, but really focusing around our voice. I want to thank you so much for being here with me today. I really hope you're excited about this, and I hope that you're as excited to come back next week as I am to spend this time with you. I love acting, and I love performing, and I want you to love it as much as I do. Or, if not, at least to gain a deeper appreciation for it and the people who do it. Thanks again for being here, and I can't wait to see you next Thursday. Have a good week until then.